Being You by Anil Seth, A New Science of Consciousness. Anil Seth is one of the world's leading researchers into the biological basis of conscious experience. In Being You, he guides the reader through crucial contributions from philosophy, biology, cognitive science, neuroscience, and artificial intelligence, developing a new understanding of consciousness and of what it means to be a self. He interviews personal stories from undergoing a general anesthesia to visiting octopus laboratories with the most up to date findings in the science of consciousness, drawing richly upon his own original research. His radical argument is that we do not perceive things as they are, but rather that we are prediction machines constantly estimating and hallucinating our world, and that we experience the world and the self with, through, and because of our living bodies. Accessible and inspiring and eye-opening. Being You is revolutionary book that will live forever, alter your relationship with the world and with yourself. Being You is not as simple as it sounds. Somehow, within each of our brains, billions of neurons work to create our conscious experience. How does this happen? Why do we experience life in the first person? After over 20 years of researching the brain, neuroscientist Anil Seth puts forward a radical new theory of consciousness and self. His unique theory of what it means to be you challenges our understanding of perception and reality, and it turns what you thought you knew about yourself on its head. Prologue. 5 years ago, for the third time in my life, I ceased to accept. I was having a small operation and my brain was filling with anesthetic. I remember sensations of blackness, detachment, and falling apart. General anesthesia was is very different from going to sleep. It has to be if you are asleep. The surgeon's knife will be quickly wake you up. States of deep anesthesia have more in common with catastrophic conditions like coma and the vegetative state, where consciousness is completely absent. Under profound anesthesia, the brain's electrical activity is almost entirely quiescent, something that never happens in normal life. Awake or asleep, it is one of the miracles of modern medicine that anesthesiologists can routinely alter people's brains so that they enter and return from such deeply unconscious states. It's an act of transformation, a kind of magic. Anesthesia is the art of turning people into objects. The objects, of course, gets turned back into people. So I returned, drowsy and disoriented, but definitely there. No time seemed to be have passed. Walking from a deep sleep, I am sometimes confused about the time, but there is always the impression that at least some amount of time has gone by, of a continuity between my consciousness then and my consciousness now. Under general anesthesia, things are different. I could have been under for 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 years, or even 50. And under doesn't quite express it. I was simply Not then a promotion of the total oblivion of death, and in its absence of anything is strangely comforting. General anesthesia doesn't just work on your brain or on your mind, it works on your consciousness by altering the delicate electrochemical balance within the neural sec- security inside your head. The basic ground state of what it is to be is temporarily abolished. In this process lies one of the greatest remaining mysteries in science and in philosophy too. Somehow, within each of our brains, the combined activity of billions of neurons, each one of a tiny biological machine, is giving a rise to a conscious experience. And not just any conscious experience, your conscious experience right there, right now. How does this happen? Why do we experience life in the first person? I have a childhood memory of looking in the bathroom mirror and for the first time realizing that in my experience, at the precise moment, the experience of being me would at some point come to an end, and that I would die. I must have been able to about 8 or 9 years old, and like all early memories, it is unreliable. But perhaps it was at this moment that I also realized that if my consciousness could end, then it must depend in some way on the stuff I was made of, on the physical materiality of my body and my brain. It seems to me that I have been grappling with this mystery in one way or another ever since. As an undergraduate student at Cambridge University in the early 90s, a teenage romance with physics and philosophy broadened into a fascination with psychology and neuroscience, even though at the times these fields seemed to avoid even outlaw all mention of consciousness. My PhD research took me on a long and unexpectedly valuable detour through artificial intelligence and robotics. Before a 6 year stint at the Neuroscience Institute in San Diego on the shores of the Pacific, finally delivered the chance to investigate the brain basis of consciousness directly. There, I worked with the Nobel laureate General Edelman, one of the most significant figures in bringing consciousness back into view as a legitimate scientific focus. For more than a decade, I have been co-director of a research center, the Sackler Center for Consciousness Science at the University of Citrus, nestled among the gentle green hills of the South Downs by the seaside of city of Brighton. Our center brings together neuroscientists, physiologists, psychiatrists, brain imagers, virtual reality wizards, and mathematicians and philosophers. All of us try to open new windows up onto the great basis of conscious experience. Whether you are a scientist or not, consciousness is a mystery that matters. For each of us, our conscious experience is all there is. Without it, there is nothing at all. No world, no self, no interior, and no exterior. Imagine that a future vision of perhaps not so far away offers you the deal of a lifetime. I can replace your brain with a machine that is its equal in every way, so that from the outside nobody could tell the difference. This new machine has many advantages. It is immune to decay and perhaps it allows you to live forever. But there's a catch. Since even future me is not sure how real brains give rise to consciousness, I can guarantee that you will have any conscious experiences at all. Did you take up this offer? Maybe you will, if consciousness depends on potential capacity, on the power of complexity of the brain's circuit. But maybe you won't, if consciousness depends on a scientific biological material, neurons, for example. Of course, since your machine brain leads to identical behavior in every way. When I ask you whether you are conscious, you will say yes. But what if this despises this answer? Life, for you, is no longer in the first person. I suspect that you wouldn't take the deal. Without consciousness, it may hardly matter whether you lived for another 5 years or another 500. In all that time, there would be nothing it would be like it to be you. Philosophical games aside, the practical importance of understanding the brain basis of consciousness is easy to appreciate. General anesthesia has to count as one of the great inventions of all time. Less happily distressing distributions of consciousness can accompany brain injuries and mental illness for the increasing number of us, me included, who encounter these conditions, and for each one of us, conscious experience changed throughout life, from the bluing and buzzing confusion of early life to the apparent, through probably illusory, or certainly not universal clarity of adulthood, and on to a final drift into the gradual and for some disoriently rapid dissolution of the self as neurodegenerative decay sets in. Each, at each stage in this process, you exist, and the notion that there is a single, unique, conscious self, a soul that persists over time, may be grossly mistaken. Indeed, one of the most compelling aspects of the mystery of consciousness is the nature of self. Is consciousness possible without self consciousness? And if so, would it still matter so much? Answers to difficult questions like these have many implications for how we think about the world and life it contains. When does consciousness begin in development? Does it emerge at birth, or is it present even in the what about consciousness in non-human animals, and not just in primates and other mammals, but in otherworldly creatures like the octopus, perhaps mammals, even in simple organisms such as nematode worms or bacteria? Is there anything it is like to be an Escherichia coli or a sea bass? What about future machines? Here we ought to be concerned not just the power of that new forms in artificial intelligence are giving over us, but also about whether and when we need to take an ethical stance towards them. For me, these questions evoke this uncanny sympathy I felt when watching Dave Bowman destroy Hal's personality in the movie in the film 2001, A Space Odyssey. By the simple act of removing its memory blanks one by one in the greater empathy elicited by the plight of Ridley Scott's replicants in Blade Runner, there is a clue about the importance of nature as living machines for the experience of being a conscious self. This book is about neuroscience of consciousness. This attempt to understand how the inner universe of subjective experience relates to and can be explained in terms of biological, physical processes in unfolding in brain and bodies. This is the project that has captivated me throughout my career, and I believe it has now reached a point where at which glimmerings of answers are beginning to emerge. These glimmerings already change dramatically, and how we think about conscious experiences of the world around us and of ourselves within it. The way we think about consciousness touches every aspect of our lives. My science of consciousness is nothing less than an account of what we are, who we are, and what it is like to be me or to be you, and of why there is not anything it is like to be at all. The story I will tell is a personal view, shaped over many years of research, contemplation, and conservation. The way I see it, consciousness won't be solved in the same way that humans know was decoded or the reality of climate change established, nor will its mystery suddenly yield to its single eureka like insight, a pleasant but usually incorrect myth about how scientific understanding of progresses. For me, a science of consciousness should explain how the variation properties of consciousness depend on and relate to the operations of neuronal network inside our heads. The goal of consciousness science should not be, at least not primarily, to explain why consciousness happened to be the part of universe in the first place, nor should it be to understand how the brain works in all complexity while sweeping the mystery of consciousness away under the carpet. What I hope to show you is that by accounting for properties of consciousness in terms of mechanisms in brains and bodies, the deep metaphysical whys and how consciousness becomes little by little less mysterious. I use the word wetware to underline that brains are not computers made of meat. They are chemical machines as much as they are electrical networks. Every brain that has ever existed has been a part of a living body, embedded in and interacting with its environment, an environment which in many cases contains other embodied brains, explaining the properties of consciousness in terms of biophysical mechanisms requires understanding brains and conscious minds as embodied and embedded systems. In the end, I want to leave you with the new conception of the self that accept consciousness, which for each of us is probably the most meaningful and influential tradition, dating back at least as far as Descartes in the 17th century held that non-human animals lack conscious selfhood because they did not have traditional minds to guide their behavior. They were beast machines, flesh automatons without the ability to reflect on their own existence. I don't agree. In my view, consciousness has more to do with being alive than with being intelligent. We are conscious selves precisely because we are beast machines. I will make the case that experiences of being you or being me emerged from the way the brain predicts and controls the internal state of the body. The essence of selfhood is neither a rational mind or nor a ephemeral soul. It is a deeply employed biological process, a process that underpins the simple feeling of being alive, that is the basis for all our experiences of self. Indeed, for any conscious experience at all, being you is literally about your body. This book is divided into four parts. In the first part, I explain my approach to the scientific study of consciousness. This part also deals with the question of conscious level, of how conscious a word or subject can be, and with the progress in attempts to measure consciousness. The second part takes on the topic of conscious contact, of what you are conscious of when you are conscious. Part 3 turns the focus inwards to the self and to all the varied experiences that conscious selfhood entails. The fourth and final part, other, explores what this new way of understanding consciousness can say about other animals and what the possibility of sentient machines. By the end of the book, you will understand that our conscious experiences, the world and self, are forms of brain-based prediction, controlled hallucinations that arise with truth and because of our living bodies. Despite his tarnished reputation among neuroscientists, Sigmund Freud was about right about many things. Looking back through the history of science, he identified three strikes against the perceived self-importance of the human species, each marking a major scientific advance that was strongly resisted at the time. The first was by Copernicus, who showed with his heliocentric theory that the Earth rotates around the Sun and not the other way around. With this dawned the realization that we are not at the center of the universe, we are just a speck somewhere out there in the vastness, a pale blue dot suspended in the abyss. Next came Darwin, who believed that we share common ancestry with all the living things. A realization that is astonishingly still resisted in some parts of the world, even today. Immodestly, Freud's third strike against human exceptionalism was his own theory of unconscious minds. We challenge the idea that our mental lives are under our conscious rational control. While he may have been off target in the details, Freud was absolutely right to point out that a naturalistic explanation of mind and consciousness would be a further and perhaps final retorment of humankind. These shifts in how we see ourselves are to be welcomed. Each new advance in our understanding comes a new sense of wonder and a new ability to see ourselves as less apart from and more a part of the depths nature. Our consciousness experiences are part of nature, just as our body are, just as our world is. And when life ends, consciousness will end too. When I think about this, I transported back into my experience, my non-experience of anesthesia, to its oblivion, perhaps comforting, but oblivion nonetheless. The novelist Julian Barnes, in his meditation on mortality, puts it perfectly. When the end of consciousness comes, there is nothing, really nothing, to be frightened of.